Good afternoon. Welcome to the Dunananik Show. I'm your host. My name is Margaret Elias. We are broadcasting out of the Inuit Cultural Resource Center located here in Inuvik. On today's episode, we have guests Dorothy and Jeffery Amos, and they are going to share some storytelling and share their lives with us on today's episode.
Hi, I'm Jeffery Amos, my wife Dorothy. My parents are Jesse and Colin Amos. Grandparents on my mom's side is Mary Caglick and step-grandfather Buster. Grandparents on my dad's side is Amos and Susie Amos, or Amos Dama. I wanted to tell some stories about my fondest memories growing up. I was probably about 4 years old when my mom took me to my grandfather's traditional cabin out in the Delta. It's called Arkulek, and I vaguely remember a sled ride from Aklavik to the Delta camp. I could like right now I could literally hear the toboggan running over the ice, glistening ice, and I could smell dogs traveling, and once in a while smell a familiar dog smell, poop smell. And those are fond memories, like a little boy in a sled and going to my grandfather who I didn't know, and coming into the cabin. My grandfather's was just something so magical. I still remember just coming into this cabin. There was about five or six log houses there, and dogs. Everywhere I looked, there was dogs. Because my grandfather had 5 sons, and they all had their own teams, and dogs all over. So that really appealed to me, and kind of got attached to dogs. And so the earliest memory I have of my grandfather's sitting on a log outside in the wintertime, November, December, and he's got this big whipsaw and he's sawing away, and he stopped, and he only spoke his language. And at 4 or 5 years old, I can remember sort of understanding, because he had this way of explaining. He was telling stories, and every time he'd stop, and he'd start sawing again, and he'd stop and tell stories. And he said one day, in his language, he said one day, when you get older, you're going to be able to talk to people. He said, in a little black box. And at 4 years old, it don't make any sense to me. I just agreed, and then he stopped again. He said, and a little while later, you're going to be able to talk to them, people on a little black box. And I jumped back a few years to when my grandfather moved to town after his wife, my nanak, passed away, and his health started to fail. And Derek Dama moved to town, a little black matchbox. I was coming home after school, about grade 4, grade 5, coming home after school, and we had a little black box. And I got into the porch. It was after badminton practice, so about 6, 7 o'clock. Got into the porch, and I heard really strange noise coming in from the living room, dining room of our house. And I put my ear to the door, and I could hear my mom and dad laughing away. And then I heard this strange noise, like, well, curiosity. I opened the door, and there was mom and dad sitting in front of a black box. We were introduced to TV that time, 1968, 69, somewhere, 67, I think. And they were watching Bugs Bunny. We had Bugs Bunny for 1 hour a day. And so that was the introduction to my grandfather. And later on in years, I found out that Grandfather Dama was recognized as a kind of like a visionary. He could see into the future, and then so I saw the little black box. He said we can see people, and then years later, when one of my boys got introduced to sports, his first trip out, volleyball camps. He was going with a couple of boys from here, and I was working at a young offender facility, and I had some extra money, so when my boy was going out, I gave him some some money, and I said, "Here, you guys are, they're just starting to catch up to technology and all that." And I said, "Here, buy a phone or something, or call me every so often when you're traveling." And so he said, "Yeah." So a couple of days after he's gone, I was sitting in front of the computer, which was absolutely strange to me, but I was on a computer and looking for games for kids. And the bottom of my phone, my cell started beeping, and I looked at it really close. Here was letters ICQ. You remember that? That was the first social media thing way back there. And so I clicked on it and turned the speakers up, and there was my son. He said, "Hi, Dad. If you click on this," he said, "type this in, you'll be able to, I'll give you some instructions." So I didn't know anything about Google Earth then. So this great big globe showed up. Then he said, "Press these buttons here." So I pressed some more buttons, and it came down to Canada. Pressed a few more buttons, and then BC, right to the street corner in Vancouver where his training was happening.
Oh
So
my goodness.
ICQ. So
Yeah.
you're to be able to talk to the people in a small box like my grandfather saw.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, memories like that, so reflective. Another fond memory I have when I was growing up is when we moved to my grandmother's side, the Delta. She was right just about 12 air miles from here in Inuvik. So we moved up in a late spring or early spring, just before the ice started to get too bad. Dog team and great grandfather Louis Kaglick was at the time. He said, "You got to be ready for high water." So I guess he was predicting some high water, and sure enough, all the land around us is straight water. And I remember sitting in my Uncle Joe's canoe, 12-foot paddling canoe, cedar canoe. We're paddling to the high ground, and we got to this high ground, and all it was just like a big bump in the ground, and that was the high ground. And we're thankful for it because we were able to stay there until the water started receding, and we came back. But the fond memory of that is just sitting in Uncle Joe's canoe while he's paddling, and could hear him bring tears, like his canoe, his paddle just swishing in the water, and he's singing. He loved to sing, but he rarely ever sang public because just the way he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was singing me a Hank Williams song, and just about his life growing up, and there's fond memories growing up with him. And so memories of life in early years growing up in the Delta was really heaven for me until I was introduced to school.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the bush, but I also loved going to school. For whatever reason, I mean, I really enjoyed school. So much so that if I ever doing exams, if I didn't pass, if I didn't get a 70 or 80, I usually asked the teachers to rewrite, and they were okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So residential school, yeah, I was a survivor. I went. My parents went. My grandfather, because he had a schooner, he was not a residential school survivor, but he helped to transport students back and forth. Um, um, the good for me in residential school was I got the education, I got to play sports, and I met fellow classmates who were still chat together, social media, right across the globe. We're still in touch. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of friends in New Zealand. One of them is in North Korea. Originally from here, went to school, but just broadened their traveled all over the place. We still talk back and forth. We bring some memories back, but school life for me was really, really enjoyable. I had the privilege of learning sports, and I was just talking to a guy today, and who was a teacher way back then, and he said, you're still playing sports, I see. So I read about you in the paper. He said, you must be darn near 70. I said, I am. And I'm still active. And he said, how can you do that? I said, oh, well, I got 14 grandkids. I have to keep chasing. So yeah, I mean, growing up for me was enjoyable. We had our struggles with my wife growing up, but but if it wasn't for that early livelihood, parents and uncles, yeah, had a good time. I loved the life with my grandfather. He pretty much taught me how to survive. He was a man of few words. People can remember him. He rarely spoke. Rarely, if ever, got angry. I never saw him ever lift his finger to anybody. But kind, soft-hearted, and and he was always ready to teach. So. And he taught me and all of his kids by example. He didn't say you got to do things this way. We had to watch him to learn how to set a trap. We had to watch him to learn how to skin a mink, and he didn't spoke. So that was the best form of education. And over the years, I grew up the same way with my kids. Yeah, I remember my boy wanting to learn how to paint. My oldest son said, Dad, you got to show me how you got fast, how you got so fast and good and fast. I said, my boy, that's something that you have to watch. I can't teach you how to be fast. Only me could be fast. I said, you have to sit and watch. So when he started painting and drywalling with me, he stood back one day and watching. He said, now I know your tricks, Dad. Now I know your shortcuts are going to be fast like you. So yeah, learning by example is the way grandfather taught me, and he taught my dad as well some of the good things in life. And once we were introduced into to town life, yeah, my heaven, is just as much as I want to go back out in the bush, I wanted the education. Got the education. I got introduced to sports, and then met my wife out in we lived first 3 years of our life, growing life, we spent out in the bush. And did the trapping thing and hunting and fishing, and even broke some of our traditional things that we weren't supposed to do. Women weren't allowed back then to go out in a whaleboat and harvest whale, but brought her out there and taught her how to harpoon and call muskrats, and because I didn't see it at the time, but I thought I know now that this training, this lifelong, it's going to be a lifelong relationship. So back then, yeah.
Can you still call muskrat?
I hope she tells a story, but well, I'll tell it.
Go
Okay?
ahead.
We of course, yeah, 3 years out in the bush. We first 3 years, and our kids, our daughter was with us, and we lived in tents back then. Believe it or not, we had log cabins, but we found it far easier for traveling if we just set up a tent in a lake and we're trapping muskrats. And it was cold, but we survived. And my when we moved, my son Edwin was just about 2 or 3 months old.
Yeah.
We moved into my grandmother's because she moved further up the river, get ready for high water. So we moved into their cabin. What a luxury, man! From a tent 60 below to living in a tent or a cabin with wood stove, and she had 5-star eiderdown blankets. Whoa, love this thing. But when she moved, she took just about all the food, except she left her sourdough starter. And we found that, and we had a feast of sourdough pancakes. So we went to sleep that night, just warm, don't have to worry about fire. And I woke up about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then looked for the kids. Dorothy, where's the kids? She looked behind her, nobody was around. We lifted up the blankets, the kids were not around her, so started a panic. They were sleeping underneath the bed, bum naked. They got so used to that cold. Blankets are too warm.
They were too hot.
So anyhow, getting to the muskrats, we this one spring we had a good harvest, and I brought a gunny sack load of muskrats home for Dorothy to skin, and which she was supposed. Just thought women naturally. Yeah. And it took her forever to skin a muskrat, and by the time she'd finished this one, it was already turning green. So I said, enough of that. And while she was skinning, I was starting to stretching the rats on the stretcher. Holy smoke! I'm taking more than half of the meat and the fat off the rat skin. So I said, leave it. I'll do it myself. So I think it was a blessing for her because she never had to touch another muskrat after that.
Never cleaned nothing since.
No, never did. It was kind of a mutual agreement. And I'll do it.
You sound like me and my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little, yeah. But as we grew older, we got caught up into the drugs, the alcohol scene, and the violence. But we overgrew that by making a choice in '89 to quit all that because we started having our own kids, and grandkids were in the future. So the lifestyle we chose was for the kids. Thankful that I had a good supportive partner.
Yeah. You don't miss living out in the land?
I don't.
No.
No.
Yeah.
I go out as often as I can. David knows that.
Yeah. And you have a camp just outside of
Just
town,
outside,
right? Yeah. Do you get to go out to the camp? Yeah.
Like I'm like, hurry up, Ice, I want to go fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we spend as much time out there as we can. Kids love it. My oldest grandson, when we first started taking him out to the camp, he's about 3 or 4 years old. As soon as you put him into the truck,
Yeah.
as soon as you put him on a screw, as soon as you put him in a boat to sleeping, I said, no, you're not sleeping, grandson, you got to stay. But I'm tired. I said, no, you have to stay awake, my boy. I said, how come, when he got a little older, he said, how come I can't? I said, well, you have to learn the landmarks out here. You got to learn the water. You got to learn the trees and the water and the snowdrifts and all that. And he said, how come? He said, well, I told him, well, one of these days, you're going to have to do that on your own. So by the time he was 11, 12 years old, I had no issues with him going out to the camp by himself, jumping a boat, 12, 14. So, and all the kids are like that. So
Yeah.
learn the landmarks and learn the water, learn the weather.
In the Delta, I find it, for me, it's harder in the Delta than in the coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, the coast is a little bit more easier for me to understand.
Just before I turned it over to my wife, I live in the Delta, and I had Nellie a few years ago. She brought in a whole bunch of people from Circumpolar, and we had, she came out to the camp, and brought this one guy, Johannes, I forget his last name, from Johannes, Greenland, somewhere around that way. But he came to the camp, and I told everybody that was there, help yourself, whatever's here. There's skidoos there, there's walking trails, there's skis, snowshoes, whatever. I said, check out the skidoo trail, I told Johannes. No. He said, well, jump in the sled, I'll bring you for a ride. No. No, I'm okay. So after a while, I went over. He was standing by the fire. I said, "How come you don't want to go?" He said, "Where I come from, we don't have trees." I said, "It's kind of scary. You have to drive by on all these trees." Oh, but once he got past that, I walked him through the trail behind to the lake, and this is not all that scary at all. We couldn't get him off the skidoo. So if you're anywhere out there, join us here. So, wife.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good to go. Hi, my name is Dorothy Amos. My parents are Colin and Rita Allen. My grandparents on my mom's side is little Jim Rogers, and my step-grandmother was Maggie Allen, who I knew, but my mom's mother's name was also Maggie. Her last name was Inglengasak. And on my dad's side was Ida Allen, and she usually went by Duckban, by her Inuvialuktun name. And my grandfather, his name was Colin Sr., and we never did have the privilege of meeting him because he left us before my dad was born. Oh, okay. Yeah, so. But growing up was good. The earliest I could remember is always going out in the land to my grandparents' place, Little Jim and Maggie, and they stay at Peterson Channel. And I always went by dog team. And to this day, I still wouldn't mind to go on a dog team trip in their trail. Yeah, because my uncle said that they still use that trails, and just going through the grass with the dog team and then through the portages. And that was one of my fondest times of the year, when we have to jump in a dog team and go to their camp for 2 or 3 months. My dad told me one time that when I was 3 months old, they moved us to Herschel Island so he could do some seal hunting. And they had to medevac me and found out I was allergic to seal. Yeah, so I was, when they wanted to go back to Herschel and that, I was left with my grandparents. And so every time they wanted to go that way, I always stayed with a relative. And the fondest time was when I was staying with my grandfather, Little Jim Rogers. And my nana would teach me how to do things out on make little sewing little ornaments and stuff like that. And the best part about staying out there is making, because my dad would leave about 8 or 9 in the morning, just when the sun's gonna come up for so many hours of the day. He would leave with his dog team, and by that time our breakfast and everything is all done. So me and my nana would go outside and we'd start the fire, and we'd put this big dog pot on a fire, and we'd be boiling whatever you could think of in it, and just knowing that my dad's going to come home and everything's going to be ready for him. But I really enjoyed making that dog pot. It was for the dog food. And another one is, I used to wonder why she would have this biggest pile of paper, like newspapers, old newspapers. And then when it's fall time and they can't travel anywhere because it's freezing up, she would put newspaper in her whole house on the walls, just like putting new wall on her, like new wallpaper on her house, and it just make it bright. And by springtime, they're just crispy and yellow or brown, because she used that over the winter. So I don't know, she must have had how many papers on the wall. Yeah, I thought she was so cool because I must have been about 6 or 7, and she would just tape. She'd use little square pieces of paper, like from Clinic box, and tacks, and tack it up. Yeah. And then when I started school, I started staying in town and started school, and every chance I had, I was out on the land. And then in the summertime, we would jump on what kind of boat was that, Debbie? a modernized
It was a
schooner or something.
big boat.
It was a
yeah.
really big boat from Renewable Resources. They used to have a big. It was a modernized schooner, I guess, or something, and they would put about 10 families with all their groceries and their dogs.
Oh my goodness. Was it in the river?
Yeah, and then we would leave, say we'd leave June 30th, we'd get to our whaling camp maybe July 4th
Oh my goodness.
with the 10 families and groceries, dogs, everything you need to stay out at the whaling camp for a month. Yeah, and then plus their supplies, and we were subsidized by the government, so they had their bulks of groceries to hand out to families. Like, say I needed sugar because I ran out, they had sugar and stuff like that. So they had their supplies as well.
When everyone was doing whale camps, it was just beluga whales?
Yeah,
Yeah? No one hunted them.
No,
There
no.
was no bowheads, huh?
not around there, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. Because I hear the term whaling camp all the time. But no one ever says which kind of whale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where would you guys go? Whitefish or Kendall?
We used to go to West Whitefish.
Yeah.
It's called West Whitefish because there's East Whitefish now. That's still West Whitefish. I don't know if you ever went to Richard Binder's whaling camp. It's right across in that area there, right across his camp. Yeah, we used to have. I miss going there. And that's where my husband and I met at the whaling camp.
What year? I can't remember what you said on the forms.
1976.
You guys met?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we met in 74, but that was just like.
She was just a little snot-nosed girl. at the whaling camp. 12 years old.
We were always at the camp, huh?
Yeah.
But we just never, like, he's 9 years older than me, so he was doing his
Boys and the girls, they had their own
Yeah.
Yeah, he was out
responsibilities.
learning
and hunting and fishing and
Getting wood.
getting wood and water, and I was at the muktuk
Being a
table
brat.
and
She was helping the women. Having fish.
learning anyway. I was learning,
Yeah.
which I really enjoyed. I
And the
really enjoyed.
boys, older boys and the older girls, they had their own little wee tent playground. And we were in the tent one day with the boys, my brothers, playing cards, and she stuck her head in the window. Can I play cards? Yeah. Snot running.
Okay, honey, you gotta.
Head all over the place. Get out of here. She left him, and she was persistent. She kept coming back. We did. That was the first time we met. About 12. She just turned 12, and it was a couple of years later. Then again, she came over, kept on coming over to our tent play cards. There were so many families back then. We used to play baseball, almost family against family. That's how big the camps were.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Fun. Not a worry about anything.
And when did you start playing volleyball?
It's your fault. I was all growing up. I was all badminton and basketball, running, snowshoeing, skiing, and then junior champ for years with some of my friends, badminton. Then we met her, and she was into grade 8.
Yeah, just starting grade
She
8.
was all about baseball and volleyball. Followed her volleyball one day, and the rest is history.
I should mention that you guys are well known for being good at volleyball, and all of your children are all really good at volleyball. Yeah, when Edwin spikes, all you could do is block. Yeah. And baseball. Yeah.
Yeah, sports was good for us, good for a lot of us, all of us. So yeah, I got introduced to volleyball through her.
I was going out one night, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I have volleyball practice." So he followed, and because I used to just love watching him play basketball and badminton, because he was so good at it. And I always tell my kids and my grandkids, and they always just go, "Mom." I was like, when I watch your dad play basketball or badminton, I sit there, and next thing I'm going, because he was so good at that, and but I played volleyball. I started volleyball, I think, in grade 7, and I stayed in 7 for a couple of years, I think. Yeah, and I started volleyball, and then he picked it up and just took off with it, and so I just supported him. Anything he wanted to do with sports, I supported him. When he says, he comes home and says, "I'm going to be coordinating this tournament this weekend," and I was like, "Hey, what do you need done?" And then all the Amoses pulled together. Or I'd say, "Dad's doing this," and then they kind of just fall into where they need to be. And it was just something that we always pulled together whenever he decided he's going to do something. We always supported him.
So this would have started in the 80s? You would have started doing these things with sports?
About 78, huh?
70s, 80s? And it's now 2022? And you guys are still doing it?
Yeah.
Because we just had a volleyball tournament.
Yeah. He came home and said, "We're doing the Palu tournament, and we're going to have a sourdough breakfast." I was okay, well, what do you need done? So I made sure everything was all done, and went and did breakfast for him while he organized and reffed the games. And as soon as I was done, I was gone.
Well, this year was special because we had 2 years.
2 years of nothing.
2 years of nothing. And the kids, all the kids, we ended up coaching 4 teams from the school, and we had 21 girls trying out for one age group. So they really missed the gym and the opportunity there. So, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Lots of work, but lots of fun.
In 1995, he decided to go to school as for
Recreation.
what it's called?
Recreation.
Recreation leadership?
Yeah.
The RLP?
Yeah, RLP, and that was
Life-changing, almost paradigm shift. Huh?
we survived it, and then I figured we survived that, I could survive anything. Because we had to travel. He said, "Okay, we're going to Fort Simpson." I'm like, "For?" He said, "That's where I picked my work placement."
Yeah.
So we drove there with 8 kids in the Suburban.
Oh my goodness.
We had 4 of our own kids, 3 foster kids, and me and her in the van, Suburban.
Suburban.
Yeah.
Oh, it was.
It was quite the trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of
We-
work.
Our graduation was on May 8th.
May 10th.
May 10th, and our plan was to go to my practicum placement like right after grad. And while we were going through the grad ceremonies, they officially closed the ice crossing.
Right while we're at the ceremonies.
The road is closed. And just soon as they said, "Okay, so we're done," we're home
We
straight
didn't
home.
even.
Got pulled into the parking lot. All the kids' luggage, everything was packed up outside, ready to go. Loaded into the truck. 5 spare on top of the van or Suburban, and we took off.
Did you make it?
We pulled in,
By the time we got to the Arctic Circle,
Yeah.
we were on 3 rims and 1 tire. And we had 5 spare.
It wasn't the condition of the highway, it was the shape of the tire.
Our goal was to go to Whitehorse and buy new tires.
Yeah.
Oh, for 3 days we lived on what, hot dogs?
I had $1,500 at that time. $1,500 go a long ways, and I thought it was enough to buy new tires for the Suburban.
Mm-hmm.
Blew that at
Eagle.
blew 3/4 of that at Eagle, buying 2 new tires.
Oh my
3, we had to
goodness.
get 3.
But, that was the worst part is those tires. But making the crossings, the water was
Oh,
up to there.
you could have heard a pin drop in the vehicle.
Barely made it across the Arctic Red, Mackenzie. And then the 8 Mile was the challenge. That was, as we got to the approaches, all ruts and soupy mud. My second oldest boy was sitting behind me as we start pulling across. Absolutely quiet. You could just hear the water.
Oh my
And
goodness.
start seeing it coming in through the doors. And we got to the approach, lifted up, the back tires hit the mud. My boy in the back.
They were just watching.
Oh, they must have had their eyes out of their sockets.
And what you were doing. Holding on to
Which child am I going to save first?
always the youngest. How old were your oldest ones at the time, do you figure?
And that was in 80.
Twyla
That
and
was
Chris
in
were already-
87.
Twyla and Edwin were already in Simpson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Twyla was 18 and Edwin was 17. And then,
Yeah.
And the foster kids.
yeah.
First time ever out of
Lord.
a little one. He was just on the highway, just an little guy.
I hope you still remember this.
I remember our last stretch. We were off the highway, and we hit the Liard Junction.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dirt road now. Oh man! So I said we're going to have one last good camp out before we hit the road. So we pulled off to the side, and we set up our tent there, and we starting to get a little late and tired. Gonna have a good rest before we hit Simpson. I told my daughter Tawny to bring our foster kid to the bathroom. She was walking him along the highway, and then all of a sudden I heard this, "Ah, Daddy, monster!" Took off looking and said, "Where's this monster?" And I grabbed him, trying to bring him over to where this monster was supposed to be, and picked him up and put him in a monster. I picked him up, went over to this culvert. There was a bullfrog. It's new to him, huh? Loud, ugly noise. What an experience.
Did he laugh? Or was still scared?
You were still scared. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was good next morning. I woke up.
We were staying in Simpson for 3 months. And then one day he came home and he said, we need to get supplies for like food. I said, well, I have flour and that, so I punched dough and made donuts, and somehow he advertised donuts for sale at the ball field, just because there was a bench and that there. So I made $260, I think,
Wow.
because my goal was 300.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get generous, and they were $1 each. And then we went to the store, and the amount of groceries that we got with that money was just unreal. Because that was our first trip out of living out of Inuvik, knowing the Inuvik prices, wondering if that money is going to be enough for. By that time, we had 8 kids, because Edwin moved home.
Practicum student too, so
And he told me, he said, I'm getting, $1.25 a day
25 a day.
for 3 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Are you serious?" But we managed because my sister and her husband at the time was staying in Simpson. And I would go to her place, and she had 5 kids, or she has 5 kids, and we would just all be together. And her husband at the time said, "I never ever saw a case of bread go in 1 week in my life." And I still always remember that, a case of bread in 1 week, he said, we
Yeah.
went through.
Yeah.
But you make it work.
Yeah.
You make it work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Even today, I find, like well, where we're living now, still expensive in Inuvik.
Yeah.
Just make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you pay $2 or $3 a donut.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've and this past July was our 46th anniversary. But married for 33.
33.
Yeah. Yeah.
People ask how did you do it? I said, well, there's combined effort
Yeah.
and lots of difficulties, but we always seem to work things out. And I always remember my dad Thomas' words. He said, "Things life is going to get tough as you get old, but you have to make the best of it." And that stayed in my life forever. So make the best of it.
I tried to go home. I tried to go back home to my parents' place, and I walked in with my suitcase. I was maybe a month with him after. My mom looked at me and she said, "What you doing?" I said, "I'm coming home." She said, "Nope. You made your bed, now you stay in it." So, just grateful that to this day his door was still open.
Yeah. Me and my husband, we just got married, and he was saying, "I'm gonna go to golf tonight. I never went to golf in almost a month." I said, "Okay." He said, "I hardly golf anymore." I said, "Yeah, kind of like just after you got married, huh?" We got married in August.
Yeah.
He said he never goes to golf.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you realize that you're in it, you got to go in it to win it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what it takes. Like, that's how.
Yeah. Do you guys want to share any more stories? Any more?
One more before you go.
Yeah.
I moved to Yellowknife in 2006 to gain some experience working with people on the street. Work with Salvation Army and in the wellness, and my wife at the time was working for Canadian North, so travel back and forth was easy. You know, every other week she'd come down or I'd come home, and so there's always in touch with each other. And so about 3 months after I moved down, she figured city life is something she's going to try. Yeah, so her job transferred her down, but she soon learned that city life is not for her. 5 o'clock in the morning, got to be at work at 6, got to be on the road. So everything has to be done like you're living in a city. So so this one morning I woke up fairly early and looked at, gee, it's going to be late by the time she gets to work. So I said, "Time to shower." "What?" She looked at me really sternly, really mad. She said, jumped out of bed and slammed the door and went to shower. And I looked at her and I thought, whatever. I came back after she was all dressed up, and she still looked upset. And I said, "What's the matter?" She said, she looked at me. She said, "You told me I was sour." I said, "No." I said, "You got to go shower." So little things like that, just make your relationship think about humor.
Even my kids today, Mom, you need to shower. We just laugh about it.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode with Jeffrey and Dorothy and them sharing their stories. And we'll see you on the next episode.
in ma man na ya